I would imagine most of you, as you heard the text today, were thinking, man, this is doom and gloom. This is pretty harsh stuff. And well, you should. That text from Zephaniah was law. At that time I will search Jerusalem with lamps, and I will punish the men who are complacent. And then it defines what that complacency is. Those who say in their hearts, the Lord will not do good and the Lord will not do ill. They're just kind of, God's going to be neutral with all of us. Doesn't matter who we worship, how much we worship, what we do. And then suddenly, when the time comes, they are afraid. That's what happened with this one-talent guy. You know, he could have been received into God's glory or into the master's, the joy of the master's presence, just like the other two. But he didn't because of his regard for the master. He says, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you do not sow, gathering where you scatter no seed, so I was afraid. What started out for him was simple laziness, slothfulness, and wickedness. Turned into something that manifested in him a fear of what was going to happen when he was confronted by this master. I was afraid, he says, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. It's interesting when you look at that, because God does not deny, the master does not deny this servant's harsh criticism of him. Now, I keep saying God because the master represents God in this parable. God does not deny the harsh criticism that unbelievers level against him. I'm sure we've all heard the skeptics say, how can you believe in a God who allows all of this hardship to go on in the world around us? How can you believe in a God who is going to punish people just because they don't believe in the God that goes by his name when all of these other gods exist, or these other names of gods exist? Not recognizing that those other gods, those false gods, are undermining people's understanding and faith in the one true God and the gift that God gives to us in Jesus Christ. It's not that God is just jealous for himself. He's jealous for us as well. He's jealous for his people, because those people who are worshiping false gods will inevitably try to undermine and come between them and the true God. It's a danger for us. A danger that leads to complacency. And saying, oh, we're all going to the same place. It doesn't matter what you believe. Until the time comes. And then people are going to, when it comes time to be called into account, when it comes time to settle accounts, those people will be judged according to their own criticism. How can you believe in a God who would be that judgmental? In the same way that this man ended up being judged by the very criticism that he gave. They will be judged in the same way. There is a harshness, there is a wrath that is to come. And that comes to those who are fearful and do not know the love of God in Christ Jesus. When it comes time to settle accounts with God, we'll be like the people I see going through the line, but we'll be the ones who are prepared. And when we get through the line and it comes time to settle accounts, then that person will say to us, who is God, paid in full. It's all been taken care of. Your sin debt has been taken care of by Christ, who came before you in line through this line before you, who took the price that you owed when he died on a cross in your place. Jesus came before us, and he gives us his forgiveness. And because of that forgiveness, then he gives us all the gifts that we need. He lavishes us with spiritual gifts to be used for the benefit of others in his kingdom. That's what a good work is. In God's sight, a good work is everything that a child of God does, or speaks, or thinks in faith according to the Ten Commandments, for the glory of God, for the benefit of his neighbor. That pretty well covers it all. We have been created for that. But the only way that we have been created for that is when we receive the grace that God has for us in the first place. And that's why in Ephesians chapter 2 it says that we have been saved by grace, not by works, not of our own doing, so that no one could boast. And that because of that, God has created works for us to do. We are created as his workmanship, prepared to serve in his kingdom. And we don't have to compare ourselves with those people who are, and many of you are those 5-talent people who got all kinds of things going. Or the 2-talent people, or the rest of us who are 1-talent people. We can come together with the Lord, and we know that when the judgment comes, we will be found free and clear, forgiven. And there will be no difference in our bliss between us and the ones who had been very faithful with a great deal. Glory be to God for them and all that they were able to do in God's kingdom. We will celebrate with them, because we will be so overjoyed that we are all together with them in heaven, that it doesn't matter who did more, had more. As long as we have been received into God's kingdom because of what God has done for us in Christ, and as long as we receive that forgiveness, we will be overjoyed. But in the meantime, we have plenty of opportunities to do a lot of stuff because of God's love for us in Christ. A sausage supper is a perfect example. Lots of gifts, lots of talents, lots of connections, a lot of time for us to do good for the people who come, and to practice that same kind of hospitality each and every day of our lives. This is just one snapshot of an opportunity that we have to glorify God and to be a blessing to our neighbor. The Lord bless us as we prepare to settle up before we leave. And yes, it's true, we'll all be judged. And we'll talk about this next week. But we as the people of God will simply be judged on the good that we do, while those who deny will be judged for their sins. Amen. May the peace of God that surpasses all understanding keep your hearts and your minds through faith in Christ Jesus.